Justin Bell here on Drive to Win, and I'm once again inside the Wynn Las Vegas in the beautiful Sirius XM studios. Well, it was Spa at the weekend, and one of those racetracks that, it brings back every emotion you could ever have in the world of motorsport, because it's one of the true classics. I mean, I've raced there. I actually won a world championship race in the Dodge Viper there. I've raced there in junior formula. It's one of the tracks you go to cut your teeth, and I just can't even imagine. Obviously, a generation of young men and women that learn it on the sim now, and I know it's a favorite in every single way. I mean, 389,000 fans attended this weekend. They're all migrating to a small couple of villages in the Ardennes forest. It's kind of wild when you think about it. So it's definitely one I was looking forward to. And we obviously had some of the best rain battles at Spa, and we kind of know it's going to rain. It's kind of part of it on one of the days. So it was no surprise on the Friday when they were forecasting rain on Sunday, and I was kind of looking forward to it. Well, our guest this week is Alex Jacques. He is the lead F1 TV presenter, and I'm definitely a huge fan of his. Just so knowledgeable, brings the action to my TV screen, and I always enjoy having him on the show, because there is a difference when someone is on the ground as opposed to not being there, because they get such a different perspective. And of course, commentating on it gives him all the insight. Well, it's been a couple of weeks since the last show, and so much has happened. Mainly, of course, as soon as we went to print, effectively air on our last episode, Christian Horner got released from Red Bull, and Laurent Mekies was promoted to that top Red Bull seat. There's a lot to that, and I'm looking forward to talking with Alex about it, because I do want to say one thing. Despite whatever the reasons that Christian was let go, let's remember he was and is one of the most successful team principals in history. There was that great graphic, him for 20 years, all the championships, Ferrari with like 7 different team principals in the same period of time. So I don't think Christian's future in Formula One is over. I mean, all that knowledge, knowing how to manage it, he must be pretty good at what he does. Obviously, it was a sprint race weekend. A quick recap of those results. I mean, Oscar Piastri had a stunning pole. Max did what he did, slammed it past, and as he said, had literally 15 qualifying laps to win the race, and it's his 12th sprint win. So even though they're sort of the B-level races, they really do count for points, and sometimes a good scene set for what's going to happen on the Sunday. Not always for everybody, but it certainly was a little foreshadowing of things to come this weekend for one guy, Oscar Piastri, it certainly was. I did think in qualifying for the main race, just a quick little note, I thought you could see it on Lando's face when he got pole position. What an outstanding lap. But when he got out, I think, having seen what happened to Oscar with Max going by in the sprint, I think he kind of knew that starting on pole, it's not always the best side of the track on the grid. I think he knew he was kind of going to be stuffed, even wet or dry, as they headed on their first lap. And so maybe he knew pole would be a very short-lived thing. Well, something I want to think about, have been thinking a lot about in the last couple of days, is the level of scrutiny that Formula One drivers are under these days. It's like a intensity to the media analysis of every single facet of their performance that we've never really seen before in the sport. It allows them to analyze almost every throttle application. There's so much data that everybody in the media room are getting, and we all become brilliant armchair racers without really always, we think we might understand the dynamics of being a top Formula One driver. The pressures and actually the in-car activation and execution of those things is far harder than we think. I mean, one lockup, one wide entry, and the media jump on it, and it's like, he lost the race because he went wide or locked up. And think about that in perspective to any other sport. It does not exist. Yes, they are analyzed to the 10th degree, but I remember reading something. Roger Federer, he only won after all those Wimbledon championships, all those Grand Slam titles. He won 54% of all the shots he played, which means he lost 46%. In racing, we're not given that luxury. You're not given a second serve to get the ball in. You actually have to perform at this elite level. And to me, I mean, it's like free solo climbing, one mistake and you're gone, literally in that case. But in racing, I find it quite unbelievable, the pressure they're under. So maybe sometimes we have to give them a bit of grace, and I'll talk about it with Alex, but as we are looking at these two McLaren drivers jostling for their first championship, I think it will be about the odd lockup, the odd mistake, getting sideways, a bit too much power application. So there's a lot to it. No wonder the analysis is on. Oscar and Lewis. Well, let's look at this. Lewis has 48 races in a row finishing. Max has 43 races in a row of finishing. Oscar's on 41 right now, and in 8 races time, he'd have the record. Do we need any further illustration of just quite what an epic run he is having? To be that consistent, it brings everybody in the team this level of confidence. It gives the driver this expectation of every time he goes on track, he's going to perform and succeed to whatever result you're able to at that point. I mean, 31 races in the points with very few mistakes. There's a reason if we get to the end of the season and he is the champion, there's a reason for that, isn't there? Quite outstanding. Again, I'm going to talk with Alex about this. Oscar's move on lap 1 in the rain to take the lead. I know the track was drying. I know there were dry patches, but I watched it over and over again yesterday, actually. He played it so well. You saw Lando get a little sideways coming as he came out to the top of the hill, going down. It allowed Oscar. Remember, he can't do much with that information at the time. He got right tucked up behind him. You know, they talk about it's not easy to run up behind these cars in Formula One. He got right up behind him into Eau Rouge. And I want to try and describe that to you. Get on your sim and try and do it with your eyes closed. That's almost what they were doing. He was so close at full throttle, flat to the floor, on tires that, remember, they had not been through that corner before. And in the wet, as it's drying, you don't know where the threshold of grip is. For me, the way he just committed, got right up his bum, all the way through there, full throttle, and flicked to the left at the top of the hill. I don't know. In a way, I think a lot of the media didn't grab hold of that moment enough, but maybe it's all of the ex-drivers that are sitting there going, I have no clue how he pulled that off. I mean, the balls it required to sit there so close to him, and he executed it, and of course it led him to control the race, and he won the race. But it's commitment, it's putting it all on the line in a way that only a few drivers on the grid could pull off. And in my opinion, right now, that's Max and Oscar was the one that did it then. So yeah, that for me will be, in my mind, as a Oscar Piastri defining moment all the way through. Wynn Las Vegas's Ultimate Race Week is back for 2025 and anchored, of course, by the Formula One Heineken Silver Las Vegas Grand Prix, November 20th through November 23rd. From immersive pop-ups and branded takeovers to A-list performances, and as always, thrilling views of the circuit, Wynn Las Vegas puts you right in the center of it all. For more information regarding room and ticket packages, visit winlasvegas.com. That's winlasvegas.com. Well, let's bring on our guest, Alex Jacques. I mean, he's been in the sport now for about 20 years, which means he must have been like 11 at the time. He's been in Formula One for, so many years now. This is his 10th year at Spa. He's a student of the sport. He is F1 TV's lead presenter, and his insight and his passion for the sport is why the broadcast is so good. And I'm very excited to have him here. Well, Alex, welcome back to Drive to Win, mate. It's good to see you. A busy weekend in Spa, but it sounds like a busy weekend when you get home too.
Yeah, in general, with a 12-week-old daughter, it doesn't really let off, to be honest, mate. But no, Spa was a lot of fun, relentless. The sprint weekends always are. And then who needs sleep? Who needs sleep?
Wow. Well, obviously, I'm sure heading to Spa and being in a hotel on your own and being able to get a good night's sleep was just one of the good things about the weekend. But I was thinking about you guys when you walk in there, just from a personal point of view. When you walk into Spa, it is one of those tracks like a Monza, it resonates with the history of our sport. Do you love going there? Do you love being in the middle of the forest?
Yeah. anywhere that's historic like that, when, the entrance we were taking, the first thing that you see is Eau Rouge. You wander past and you're like, oh man. And your brain gets used to it as you go through the weekend, obviously. But the first time you go past, you're like, that's impossible. How does any corner look that good? How do they race through that? Yeah, and as you say, the fact that it's all the history's there, so many motor racing memories, so many moments that you watch on TV as a kid, and yeah, those are the venues that you want to go broadcasting at, no matter what the weather's doing.
And you also, I think, at a track like that, understand the odds have just gone up. The risk factor has gone up. When I see them go to Kota, I don't go, oh, they're on a really dangerous track. Of course they are, because they're doing over 210 miles an hour. But when you go to Spa, for me, I remember, quick tangent here. I was there with my dad watching him when Stefan Beloff died in Eau Rouge with Jackie X. And I remember the track going quiet. I remember the you could hear almost the birds in the trees stop talking. It was crazy, and the emotion on everyone's face. And the fact is, Eau Rouge, you can see it, as you know, from everywhere. That's when you use the old pits. It is a high risk, high reward place.
I was thinking very similar things. Obviously, the horrible events of F2 in 2019. I know exactly what you mean about the way the track goes quiet. There's something completely wrong when you're meant to hear the roar of engines and you're meant to hear the burble of the crowd, and all you can hear is silence. It's a very, very unusual feeling in that regard. So I know exactly what you're referring to there. You're aware of it, but you're also aware that the drivers are smiling in the paddock, that they're excited to get out there. It's part of the compulsion, isn't it? It almost tells the story. Formula One celebrating 75 years this year, and it's part of that history. The drivers are compelled to test themselves at venues like that with the history, and in that history is an element of danger. And watching the F2 race and the cars climb the hill, I was watching that trackside, and it's an uneasy feeling. It's a strange one, but it is part of, as I said, that's part of the history of motor racing.
Yeah, it's when I think we deserve our status as an extreme sport. Despite all the safety, despite all the technology, for me, it's and that gets into something we'll talk about in a minute on the start. The other thing, of course, is the fans. And you guys, the TV covered it so well, showing the different grandstands. I mean, there were bloody grandstands where there's only the cars go by at 200 miles an hour and there's nothing else to see. I could not believe how many people were fitted in there. Like over 300, I think, thousand, right, over the weekend.
Yeah, amazing. And I remember going to Silverstone in the early 2000s to see my first Grand Prix in 2002. And I think the Sunday attendance was like 78,000. We don't go to a Grand Prix now where, almost all the classic Grand Prix, these events, you mentioned Kota, the event there is enormous. Silverstone is essentially a festival with a racetrack in the middle of it now. And Belgium, they're barely a meter free. The Kemmel Straight, I've never seen the Kemmel Straight, and the banking there, you can go back so many years and compare it. I've never seen it as packed as that. The atmosphere, therefore, was incredible. Fans didn't mind the rain delay. Spirits are up. It's honestly the classic venues in this era of Formula One. The atmosphere is sensational, both when there are cars on track and when there aren't. And it heightens the events. It gives it a real theater when you've got a crowd of that size, of that knowledge, and that invested. It's amazing from a sporting theater point of view. It's been incredible to see the crowd sizes swell and swell and swell.
Yeah, I love it. Well, just give me, I don't really tend to touch on the sprint race much, other than, is it a foretelling of what's to come in the main race? And as we know, it generally isn't in a lot of ways. But talk about what it does for the pressure of the pace, the tempo of the weekend. Because obviously, all my viewers and listeners, we're watching it on TV, watching it on F1 TV probably. And you don't really get a sense for that compressed schedule. But what's that like for everybody? Because their track time is so diminished.
Yeah, if you're bringing updates to the car like Ferrari were this week, you've got an hour to calibrate them. And yes, you learn more as you go through the week, and the sprint race doesn't have major points. But sets the tone. Lewis Hamilton had a frankly miserable first couple of days, didn't he? Just purely because he was on the back foot. They hadn't got the ideal setup with that car. It just makes the whole weekend frantic. I actually think the drivers who have just come out of Formula 2 are almost better attuned to it because you only get one practice session in Formula 2. So they're like, okay, it's not a problem. 3's a luxury for us. We're used to 1. And so I think there's just that contrast there, isn't there? It just makes the whole thing more frantic. It means a real premium on correlation between numbers at the factory translating to the racetrack.
Yeah.
And that's obviously what McLaren have been outstanding at, which is why they rolled out with such an advantage, certainly with Oscar Piastri straight away. But you mentioned the sprint race. What I loved about the sprint race was that Max Verstappen said afterwards, that was 15 qualifying laps. Don't care about management. Don't care about that. Any win we can get this year is special. When you see a 4-time world champion punching the air because he's just defied the McLarens for 15 laps, you know that he's taking it very, very seriously. And that was a great moment.
And you hit on something really interesting there. In it, we never know how much everyone's managing the whole way through on power, on regen and the tires and all this stuff. But in that sprint race, it was pure racing, and to go by, it was a Max Verstappen, I'm coming by anyway move, wasn't it? And yeah, he must have enjoyed it. It was great to watch. But yeah. So the start of the race, Alex, I am with you. I wish I'd had a microphone. I mean, obviously the excitement as they lined up to take the start after 90 minutes of red flag was palpable, and I could hear it in your voice. Just before we get to that, red flags are so stressful on everybody involved, aren't they? I mean, it's so funny as a driver, you're sitting in the car and you don't really pull it, you don't point it out on the broadcast. But as you know, the minute it goes red and you come in the pit lane, every single driver wants a pee. I mean, it's like you've hydrated and they're just, I mean, I remember being, you got your helmet on in the bathroom and there's all these other drivers and you're like, hey man, everyone's doing that thing. But talk about it from the point of view, that pit lane, the pressure on the teams, sitting down for 90 minutes. They have one thing, but for you guys, it brought back, almost PTSD for me of doing like Le Mans when they say, Justin, you got a vamp, find anyone to interview. And you guys were having to do that, weren't you?
Yeah, I think we've definitely gone into the day knowing, I think it's important in that regard to just sort of let the rain delay come to you.
Yeah.
Sounds really daft, but you don't want to try and force any viral moments. You don't want to try and like be hilarious immediately because the audience have just seen the thing that they tuned in for delayed. You're trying to get as much information as possible from sources that you trust.
Yeah.
Because that's where if you have someone who can tell you what's actually going to happen before anyone else, you can go, okay, we're going to need quite a lot of interviews with team principals here. We're going to need to get a reporter down there. I knew it was going to be an hour straight away. And so that allows you to sort of plan the hour. Okay, we're going to do 60 minutes with absolutely nothing to show here. So let's dig deep. And then it's about working with good people and having the ability to go all over the site. And I'm very pleased on F1 TV that we did.
Yeah, great job.
Red flags when nothing has gone wrong, they're a free hit. You can only try and make something out of nothing. But obviously the mechanics, they're getting soaked and they're going to have the pressure of the pit stop pretty soon after. So I felt sorry for them that you're getting wet for a very long time of that delay, and then that it's getting so dry that you're going to be called into the pit stop very, very quickly. So between the drivers, the broadcasters, and the mechanics, I was feeling most for the mechanics. I got to say on Sunday.
And I think it was also setting the scene for what was about to happen in the race. I think from a mental perspective, it is a test of your resolve, your mental fortitude, because it's very hard to sit out of a car when you thought you'd be racing. And I think that was probably very hard on Lando, because when you're at the front, there is only one way to go, backwards. And, when you're behind, like for Oscar, it gave him even more time to be strategizing on how he was going to decimate Lando in the first 500 yards. So let's jump to that. Okay, I don't think for me enough for the media made enough of this other than you. But when Oscar tucked himself up the backside of Lando. Yes, it wasn't full spray, but I tell you, there was enough spray. I watched it 3 times, enough spray coming off into a track where you don't actually know what the grip level is at all until you're there, because you literally know that's the hardest thing, Alex, about being the front one. But Oscar was right up his chuff all the way through Eau Rouge, sod the turbulence from the car in front. And then he just went by, and you basically, went up 4 octaves. Rightly so. It was, in my opinion, that is Oscar Piastri. That is a Max Verstappen type move. I thought it was extraordinary.
The nice thing about it's become zero-sum, hasn't it, the World Championship? We know it's going to be Lando. We know it's going to be Oscar. It's going to be one of them. And we're going to have a new world champion. Very rare in a title battle to have 2 drivers that don't have a title going for it together. We've not seen it for a while. You've got to go back to 2009, I think, off the top of my head. And that means that every moment gets heightened. And what I found most extraordinary about it is that I was speaking to Andrea Stella beforehand and speaking to him about the various factors. And he said the risk versus reward in Eau Rouge will be defining for the race, not just at the front, in the middle, at the back. He's like, it's obviously your race can be undone there and you can win it there. And then to hear him say that, and then to watch the 2 different approaches from the drivers. I mean, Oscar's got a lot of fuel in the car at that moment. That is not a light risk approach that he took. But equally, I think he knows, and all the drivers knew, that once it dried up, this regulation set around Spa, it is notoriously difficult to get by at all, let alone if you've got the same car as the person that you're racing. So that was real intent. That was a championship examination for both of them. And Oscar got it done immediately. And then, track position at Spa, absolutely everything. But it's one of those moments that if it's for third, you're like, impressive. When we now know it will be one of them, and it's so heightened to pull that off. Yeah, sizable moment for Oscar Piastri in his bid to be world champion.
I'm glad you put it like that, because I think for me, just watching him, I'm a big fan of them both. How can you not them? And I know the media are a little bit, the pundits can really flow against Lando quite quickly. He's mentally weak and, he's more emotional. But I don't care who that was behind. That was a ballsy move, and you've seen it. You're such a fan of racing. You've an aficionado. You've seen it. The greats do that. Whether it was Ayrton Senna, remember at Donington, around the outside, and you just sit there with your mouth open, going, "No one else on the planet would have done that." I think that was one of those moments, and really, really special, because that then, as you say, set everything else in motion. We saw a lot of movement in the grid behind. I mean, I was very glad you guys picked up on Lewis starting his charge. You picked that up quite early. Your producer was spot on that. It would have been easy to miss. Did you know at that point, watching Lewis back there, that he could make it all the way to the front? Did you think, God, he's actually got something going here?
Yeah, it was just really nice to see him on the attack. You don't want to see great drivers struggling, right?
No,
he has been. And that was a tough watch on the Friday and the Saturday. You want the talented drivers to show their best intermediate conditions. Having come off a Silverstone where they both struggled, they really struggled in the wet. And that was just nice to see the moves being completed. And then great strategy call to go onto the slicks at exactly the right moment. And then get stuck behind Alex Albon, but that's dry Spa. We've talked about how difficult it is to make the move in, and this is the final year of the regulations, right? So I think next year in the regulations may reset things for Spa, and I hope so, because it's not great talking about dirty air rather than great overtakes, but on the Inters, no, Lewis was electric, and any time that you climb 11 places in a Grand Prix, you've had a good Sunday.
Yeah, you really have. Just talking about Lewis, he was one of 2 very vocal giants of the sport sitting behind the pace car, the safety car. Do you think Max was right? We got robbed of an amazing rain race by them delaying the start behind the pace car?
It was completely unraceable. This is one of the great things about being there and being able to look out the window and having done a decade of motor races at Spa now. It was totally unraceable for an hour. I guess the only thing you could say is could they have got them circulating with a view, so they knew that the rain was going to lessen at 4:15. Could they get them circulating immediately on 4:15? Because the run of it is you give them a 5-minute warning and then you go into the 10-minute procedure. They get a 10-minute warning, they give them a 15-minute warning. So was the back end 20 minutes necessary? That's up for debate. What isn't up for debate, it was totally unraceable until 4:00 local time. So there was always going to be a delay of an hour. Of course, the drivers who are generational in the wet want to go racing in the rain because they have a natural God-given talent in those conditions. And they know that's the only way. Lewis and Max know that the only way that they're going to be at the very front in a race like that, no matter where you start, is if you make it a pure natural talent race. And that requires going earlier in the rain. But I definitely got the feeling that the drivers and the team bosses had discussed after Silverstone that the conditions in which Hadjar hit Antonelli were over the line for them. That was their feedback. I think fans around the world will take their opinion one way or the other. But so there was always going to be a reaction to it. And I'll give everyone an example of that. If you think back to Singapore a couple of years ago, when there was a lot of criticism about Singapore being delayed for ages and ages and ages and ages. And then the next race in Japan, they went racing. The conditions that race control go for often relate to the previous wet race. And that's what Max said afterwards, that he felt it had gone too far the other way. But I was not surprised to hear two of the greatest wet weather drivers of all time asked to go racing in the rain.
Yeah, and they're all pretty sporty on the radio for their self-serving, reasons, and I don't blame them, but you listen to it, it's a bit like watching kindergarten kids talk out, as you're about to find out very soon. But they do it from their own point of view. Anyway, it was the right decision if we'd had a big one there. The middle of the race is not too much to talk about, but I want to talk about the switching over to slicks, and as you say, Lewis did that really early. Why do you think? I mean, Lando stayed out another lap on Oscar, and went for the hard tyre. I thought that was a really good move at the time, and I did think it was going to bring the race even more, to a winning situation for him by the end. What were your mental thoughts as you were commentating on that? Because I know what you were saying, but what were you guys thinking and looking at each other when Lando stood out, especially on a 7-kilometer track?
So you've lost the lead, and therefore you've lost the preferential lap to pit on, right?
Yeah.
With that, so I think it was a really great sign that they had that strategy ready to go. They thought about, okay, we're not going to be able to, if we're on a medium and Oscar's on a medium and he's got a McLaren and we've got a McLaren. This is from Lando's side of the game.
Yeah.
They would have been thinking, we're going to have to try something. So the fact that they had that, the fact that Lando agreed to it, it was smart. The problem was there was a gap between the compounds, right? So there was a gap between the medium. There was a separate compound in between the medium and the hard. So it was deliberately as a sort of non-raceable tire by design from Pirelli. So you're now trying to take something that they've deliberately made not ideal all the way to the end. And I liked it as a call, because it gave them a chance to win the race that realistically they were not going to have if they matched the tire strategy.
Yeah. You said something earlier about, obviously you've got two horses in this race and we know who they are. They're the same team. What's your interpretation of the way communication goes down within the team? Because obviously, imagine it as 3 silos. You've got the vertical in the middle where it's communal knowledge from all the engineers, all the data, the car setups. And then when the race starts, they've got their own side of the garage, as you put it. In the race, how much crossing over of information, of radio monitoring of the other car is there? Because that's interesting to me, because I'm sure that Lando was getting told how Oscar was reporting early deg, and vice versa with Lando Oscar and what pace Lando was able to do. I'm just interested in how that's disseminated.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have visibility.
Okay.
I think they have total visibility. And then it's only if a team relationship breaks down, like at the same team, Alonso and Hamilton in 2007, it would be very, very unusual for the drawbridge to be pulled up, because then you are operating you're operating at less than 100%. And McLaren are pretty clear, and McLaren have been pretty good. They could have imposed team orders. They imposed team orders in the opening race of the year. The Piastri camp did not like it, to put it mildly, and that was the end of that. So there's no like, hey, it's wet here, let's secure the result. It's. I think the information is, my understanding of it anyway, is the information is open to both drivers.
And with that, sometimes you want to insulate your driver from too much information. We've seen oversharing sometimes in the case of Lando, but certainly with Oscar, he would want to know, projecting forward with all their AI and all their advanced algorithms, they must be so spot on with where Lando would be by the end of that race on the hards. I was a bit surprised the mediums were able to carry on for Oscar and the others at the pace they were.
One of the reasons McLaren wanted Oscar Piastri, and it looks obvious now, but if you think about the choice they had to make, it obviously wasn't working for Daniel Ricciardo. One of the words that I kept being told when they signed Oscar Piastri was adaptability. He's just a brilliant driver for this era of Formula One. Okay, can you coax out the mediums? I think if Lando had had a perfect stint on those hard tyres, he would have had a chance to pass him on the last lap. Asking a driver to be perfect in green track, yes, it's dry, but it's a green track. You've got a hard tyre on the car. That is, and you're up against Oscar Piastri, who is in the form of his life. You're asking for a perfect stint to then have one chance on the last lap. It was hard, but that's why it all came down to the first racing lap of the Grand Prix. Yeah. Because once you get that track lead, that's a track position, massive advantage. Preferential strategy, massive advantage. You're just forcing the other side of the garage onto the back foot. That's exactly what we saw. But I'm pretty sure their projection said he was going to get there by the last lap, but he had the wide moment at Pouhon. He had the lockup, didn't he? A couple of lockups at La Source, and at the end of the race, it was such a minor moment, but you lose the tire temp, you lose the momentum, You've got to build it again. Yeah, not to be for Lando.
I hadn't thought about bringing this up, but I did mention it at the beginning of the show. I think we're in this era of hyper analysis of these athletes, of these drivers that I've never seen before. In the old days, you used to be out. I mean, I remember being on the back straight at Le Mans, kind of going wide, having a half spin, and then coming on the radio going, everything all right? Yeah, traffic. I mean, you just bullshit them if you made a mistake. No other sport do our athletes have this critique of every second of their performance. And really, timing is everything in our sport, obviously. So time equals performance and results. But you go back, even when you started this 10 years ago, going to Spa, you wouldn't have isolated one moment of weakness or one lockup as the catalyst for a bad result. We just didn't do it. It was multiple mess ups and going wides and getting stuck behind traffic. Do you think it's the lack of track time? Do you think it's the sim-based world we live in where, I mean, they know everything about what's going to go on? Why do you think we're able to isolate identify what they do and almost critique them for one bloody small mistake? And it's like, ooh, Lando,
Yeah, I know entirely what you mean. It's a strange one. I've been writing a book about Formula One, and I was reviewing the 86 race in Adelaide for one of the chapters, and Piquet is a title contender that day, along with Prost and Mansell. Piquet has a spin. Piquet has a spin from the lead, and it's almost like a casual thing that's possible. You spin from the lead in this day and age, it would think of the conjecture if you have that moment. There's no rejoining and getting back to it. Yeah, it has been, and I said with a couple of laps to go, this is the standard that Oscar Piastri is setting Lando. You can probably have one lockup, but you can't have three. And then as a result, when it effectively became a time trial, could he get into DRS by the end of the Grand Prix? When it becomes that, everything gets poured over. And the element is the broadcast is the best it's ever been in terms of covering it across the entire world. So we're going to, if you compare it to even 10 years ago, onboard cameras on every single car, most cameras that there's ever been. You're not going to miss a moment. You're not going to be able to go on the timing page. Oh, we think he went wide at Pouhon. we're going to be able to show it. We're going to be able to run it in. So obviously, compare that to 86. They didn't have
No.
everything that I just listed. So the covering all of the show has meant that every single moment there's no escape. And yeah, I just think in general, like, there is so much written in a varied season when there are so many contenders, but when it comes down to two, it is zero sum. Every tough moment gets exemplified. Every great moment becomes even better because the point swing is so dramatic. I mean, if he'd made it work, the gap is 2 in the World Championship. It goes the other way, it's 16. It's tough when it's the same team and it's winner take all, and it will be that all the way to the end of the year. And that's a rare pressure. That's a very rare pressure that you don't know if you have the entire skill set until you're tested in that moment. And Lando's had what? He's had the nominal chance for probably half a season as a dress rehearsal. And Piastri's not been in a title battle since 2021 when he decimated the field in Formula 2 that year. Took half the year to learn it and then spent the other half just disappearing down the road from the rest of the field. Very talented field as well. So, yeah, but you don't know until you're in that moment. And yeah, it's zero sum, which is great for us and really tough for the drivers.
Yeah, really well said. And I think it's unique for us that we're only the halfway mark looking to see how this plays out with the thousands of alternative permutations of it. It makes it very exciting, especially when you think of the final result. Piastri crosses the line from Norris, from Leclerc, and then Verstappen, obviously Russell after that. Lewis in 7th place. Obviously, let's pick up on what a lot of people are talking about, as that was the halfway race, and then we have one more, obviously Hungary, and then a little break, the summer break. How important was this for Oscar in his psychological and territorial battle within the team?
You get certain races, don't you, in a title battle where you're like, oh, this is different. This is a different examination. Okay, can you overtake in the wet? You've probably got maximum 2 chances before you're both on the same tire. You're both in that situation. He did it immediately. So that is a big moment. Passing the tests when they come up as early as possible is huge. If you think back to Miami when Oscar was able to get past Max Verstappen, and then Lando spent the next laps trying to get past him. It's big, but equally it's going to ebb and flow. I mean, the fact that if Lando has a slightly tidier stint, Oscar has seen that big points gap disappear. Think about what we'd be talking. Oh my word, he's let 20 points slip. It's going to come down to such fine margins, which is a sporting cliche, but this year it's really true. This year it is. So massive result for Oscar, but Lando had put 2 in a row together there. Wasn't a million miles away from putting 3 in a row. I think it's the fact that Oscar's such a calm character as well. This is a really different battle because they're not getting stuck into each other in the way that you used to see in previous years. There's none of the animosity of the last time we saw this in Formula One, which was Rosberg and Hamilton. They're shaking hands at the end. And I'd be really, really surprised unless I can't see that disappearing. I think it's going to be sporting all the way through. They might collide again, but I think it's going to be sporting all the way through because that's kind of the characters that they are. So there's something gloriously old school about this. They're pushing each other to the greatest heights of their careers so far. One of them's going to be the world champion, and they're still shaking hands at the end of it, and not just for the cameras, just because they're actually genuinely 2 very decent people.
You saw it, didn't you, with Lando? He's like, he did great. He just was on it, and he wasn't happy. He was not outwardly disappointed in his result at all because he knew he did the best he could on the day. And I think that's going to be the measure of the year, as you said, as we go through, who is the better man on that Sunday. And it won't be the same one every week. So great fun for us. Okay, jumping down to Ferrari, obviously a solid, strong result for Charles Leclerc. It's his 5th podium. I mean, it's like he keeps getting on the podium, and yet we're not really shouting about Ferrari. As you said, Lewis really put it all together, came all the way through. You've watched Lewis for a long time now. His abject disappointment and his inability to hide it on the Friday and Saturday was so palpable. You almost saw him as like the little teenage kid again going, I just don't know what's happening. He's so used to being on top. And you see his enthusiasm when he does get back on top and have a good race. Do you think his motivations have changed much? Do you think he's just as hungry? Because you see flashes of it.
Yeah, I think he is just as hungry. I do. I think he's just as hungry. I think you've got to, at 40 years of age, I think, and when you're weighing up that team move to Ferrari, I think you've got to really look at whether you've got the energy to carry on and whether you think you can perform. And I have no doubt, if he even had a hint of a doubt that he didn't have that still and didn't have his full capacity to give, he wouldn't have done it. Because no one wants to finish on a poor note. I don't think this regulation set has suited his style at all. Not making an excuse, but if you consider that Lewis Hamilton has the most pole positions in history, and he's taken one in this regulation set.
Yeah.
He got one.
Yeah.
And in that time, George Russell has more, Charles Leclerc's taken a hatful, Max Verstappen's taken a silly amount. Like, it's been shared round. I just don't think he's been able to drive to the extremity of his obvious skill in that time. But no, I don't think there's any motivation lacking. I think, if anything, this couple of sticky races, certainly like the first 2 days of the weekend that he had, it's only going to increase it. It's only going to increase his desire to work there. Do you remember that video? I think it was in Miami. This is off the top of my head, so it might be wrong. And Max Verstappen's wandering in, and he's like, "Look who are the first two here." 4-time world champion, 7-time world champion.
Yeah.
There's no lack of commitment. He's still in it for ultimately trying to get Ferrari back to a place where they can contend and an 8th title for him.
And what I love about it, you see it in all sports. When you're on the way up, money's a big part of it. You want to be a rich driver. You want to make the money. You look at your heroes and you're like, oh, I'm going to get rich. The drivers know they're getting Formula One. They're going to do well. He's worth like $500 million now. And he's still getting up and training and working and pushing. So that to me is the measure of a true sportsman, when his love for the craft is not about the money now. And I think it's like Max. He just loves racing. Well, Red Bull. What was that like with Laurent Mekies in the pit lane? What was it like seeing him come in the first time? Obviously, I actually had a gap. Horner got released in the gap between these last few races. Was it a different energy, a different vibe? Could you feel the sort of shift in the pit lane?
It was weird. There are two moments in Formula One in the last 2 weeks where you're like, is this real? Number one, Hülkenberg getting on the podium. You come around the final corner, he's like, how is he doing this? This is fantastic. And seeing CEO, team principal, and it's not next to Christian Horner's name. Mekies is a class act. Laurent Mekies has been excellent and wanted the Ferrari job, didn't get it, didn't have a strop about it, went and proved that he could do it at Racing Bulls. He's a really well-respected character. He's got his own way of doing it. We saw that with the decision to upgrade Yuki's car and take the spare part pool away from Max and to put it on Yuki's car. You saw therefore the instant best qualifying with Red Bull for Yuki Tsunoda straight away. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think that's me putting two and two together. I think that is a direct reference. He's got a team principal there. Yuki knows that he's got great results with in the past. And ultimately, he knows that Laurent Mekies believes in Yuki Tsunoda. And that is massive for the second car, because they're in a different phase now, aren't they? They're rebuilding that. They've had their two great eras, and that rebuild might be 6 months. It might be longer, but it was strange though. It was odd to see Red Bull led by only their second ever team principal.
Yeah, I was reading something this morning about how in this era when it's so technical, Christian was almost one of the last team principals without an engineering background. And now we're seeing this is the new way. Maybe that's the only way as CEO, effectively, as team principal, you can collate and manage all that data, all those amazing departments of talented men and women. Maybe you have to be an engineer now.
You might do. I think it's more. So many teams have turned over their team principal in the last 2 years that you get people coming in, and obviously to keep that job and get that job, you need results and you need to have an ethos, and that often involves hiring people. And if you've not had someone with an understanding of what exactly needs to go into position, that team has been slightly left behind. But I still think I still think you could have someone as a CEO from a business background and then a team principal who's an engineer, exactly like McLaren have. You're still going to need that mind.
Mm.
And sometimes a different pair of eyes from a different background can be a massive advantage. So I don't think it's necessarily only going to be engineers, but in terms of, running the team day to day, that aspect, that can only be an advantage when you've got someone who's had to work their way up. We saw a graphic on the broadcast. Adam Permain, 36 years in Formula One to get to team principal. Well, is that enough experience for you? Incredible, the wealth of knowledge that he can bring. The one thing that's worth saying as well with these engineers stepping up, they're doing jobs that are very, very similar. Like, you get to sporting director, you are taking a lot of the minute by minute decisions yourself at that point, and then they're just expanding it to essentially talk to the broadcast a lot more and be a face as well as the internal face that runs things.
And I'm sure the sporting director is also in those meetings when you go head to head with Toto and you go head to head with Stella. I mean, that to me is the backroom brawling that you have to have a stout personality for. I'm sure those are not easy meetings, right? I mean, you're talking billions of dollars on the table. They must be pretty sporty.
Well, that's a very interesting point, in that Formula One is a lot more united than it used to be. It's not. Do you remember when we used to have every decade or so a breakaway threat?
Yeah.
Those days are gone. Those days are gone. Like, the teams voted for a cost cap, which would have been unthinkable in the early 2000s or early 1990s. So they're very unified in that regard. So the political chess playing that once was a huge facet of Formula One, that is far less of a skill set that's required. You're not trying to outwit your rivals in the same way, because everyone knows that working together has massively benefited Formula One in recent times. So maybe there is more. Maybe that is why it's skewed more towards the engineering background, because there's less politics and there's more focus on track.
Good point. Well, before we talk about Hungary quickly, Kimi Antonelli obviously seemed very, very emotional about the weekend. I just have to keep reminding myself, he's 18. That's a lot of pressure. He just got his driving license. I mean, he's in Formula One. He's under the umbrella of Toto. And I just think he's an 18-year-old. He's got a tremendous amount of emotions going up and down. He's got a bright future. He just has to be guided through this phase. Would you say that's what's going on?
Let's look at his season at the end of the season, is what I'd say. And that's what I'd be saying to him as well.
Yeah. It's
your rookie year. Of course, you're going to have tough moments. The upside of driving for Mercedes is that you get an opportunity in Formula One. The downside is you're going to be heavily criticized if you're not consistently in that top 8. And look at the 7 drivers that we expect to be ahead of him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're ridiculously talented. So he's got an incredibly steep learning curve. You cannot ask someone to be completely consistent in their learning curve. So he's obviously going through a really tough run that, by the way, was one of the youngest podium finishers in Formula One history. So let's have a look when he's done 24 Grand Prix and assess then. You've got to give the guy a chance to learn the ropes in Formula One and almost ignore the fact he's at Mercedes. Mercedes rushed him through. He's obviously going to take the opportunity. They will. We just want to see his talent. They'll find a way to get to his talent. Obviously, a bit of a tough run that he's been on in the last 7 races with only the 1 point scoring finish, but that was the podium. So Let's see when we get to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, and remember, Oscar Piastri's first year was pretty mediocre too, as he learnt the ropes, and released like a missile a couple of years later. Okay, this weekend in Hungary, just before the summer break, predictions for it? I actually like the way last year finished. You know, in Piastri, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc, Verstappen. I'm not sure we're not going to see a similar lineup.
I think it'll be the usual contenders. Yeah, I don't expect, given the heat we're expecting the weekend. Mercedes seem lost with that car at the moment.
Yeah.
They seem genuinely confused by the direction they've gone in. So I don't think they'll be at the very front. Ferrari has always had great. It doesn't matter what year it is. It's had great mechanical grip. That's going to be incredibly useful. The Hungarian Max, mega everywhere. So he's going to be a contender. And I think the McLarens will be as they were last year, 1 and 2 again. They keep doing it week in, week out. It's a good Lando Norris track. It's a great track for him to go to after a slightly painful defeat in Spa. It doesn't matter what car era of competitiveness McLaren have been in or what junior category he's been in. He's always been quick around that circuit.
Well, thank you. Well, listen, mate, I really appreciate it. It's always good because you're there and you also, you're talking about it. You're one of the best people I could ever have on here. And I do want to say that I think you're coming into your own too. Your skill set behind the microphone it's just like you're on a wave right now. I'm not blowing smoke up your doodah, but it honestly is. You're as good as anyone now. It's fantastic. Good to listen to.
Those are very kind words, and being British, I have no idea what to do with them.
Exactly. So just shuffle off and have a cup of tea and look embarrassed. Have fun with your daughter. Enjoy it. Are you going to Hungary? Obviously, you'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be looking forward to it.
All right. Take care, mate. Alex, thanks so much. Thanks for being a part of the show.
Always great to talk to you, mate.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Alex. Always a great time having him on the show. I just wish I had a little bit of his memory stick I could shove in my brain. Just being able to recall races from the past. Very impressive. Well, Hungaroring this weekend. Just think about the results last year. I mean, Piastri won the race. It was his maiden victory in Formula One. Norris finished second. That was marking McLaren's first 1-2 since the 2021 Italian Grand Prix. And then Lewis was up there in third as a Mercedes driver. But it's not inconceivable he wouldn't be back up there this year. If I was a betting man, I would actually place a bet that, as I just said to Alex, I don't think the results are going to look that different. Piastri, Norris, Hamilton, Leclerc, you could switch that round, and Max right behind them. I think we're definitely going into an era for Max where he's going to exploit the advantage when he can, but let's face it, he's not in equal equipments. And I just think that it is going to be a big scene set for not just the last half of the year, but what they do in their summer break. And I'm very interested to talk about what they do in their summer break afterwards. I think the papaya rules thing, Andrea Stella, he is, team principal of McLaren. He is letting them race. He's literally letting them fight it out to the end. And I agree with that philosophy. I think it literally has to be done till the point of no return. And that, in my opinion, will probably be the last race. I think as we head into Hungaroring, you're going to see a lot of jostling for position. It allows the teams and mechanics to set, it's their last chance to use these upgrades until they have their mandatory 3-week break. And I just think we're going to see, an explosive weekend on a track. And as Alex said, it does suit Lando's driving style. So I'm very excited for what we're going to be saying in exactly 7 days' time. Well, a big thank you to Alex, obviously, for joining the show, and to the Wynn Las Vegas for having me here in their beautiful studios and SiriusXM. Remember, you can check us out on ESPN Extra, Channel 81, and on demand on the app. I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye.